I lived in Burlington, North Carolina, and I used to race BMX, and I had done it since I was, like 9 years old. I had done it for years, and I even raced as a pro in my early 20s. And I was at a point in my life where it was just a hobby, and I didn't take it too seriously. I just did it for fun. And I was at my home track, and I was on a section of the track I knew really well, and I just lost control. I remember being in the air thinking this is going to hurt as I was falling, and it's the second I hit the ground, I couldn't feel anything, and I tumbled, and I could kind of see my arms and legs flailing, but I couldn't feel them. And I came to a stop, and by the time I had come to a stop, I knew. I didn't know I was permanently paralyzed, but I knew that I had broken my, I thought I'd broken my back. I ended up breaking my neck. They called in a helicopter, and I got loaded on. And I remember thinking that if I'm going to be paralyzed the rest of my life, I was just hoping something would happen and the helicopter would crash or not make it. Part of me was thinking it wasn't permanent, but the other part was thinking if it's permanent, I don't want to live. I was struggling to breathe, and the paramedic, he put his hand on my shoulder because I think he knew I couldn't feel below my chest. And he just told me to relax and that everything was going to be okay.
So Nova Fairfax Hospital is a level 1 trauma center. We're the only one in Northern Virginia. So really anyone within a 200-mile radius who sustains the significant type of injury automatically gets medevaced or ambulance right over to our center.
I was only a quarter of a mile from the finish, and I was going down the hill at a pretty good clip, about 20 miles an hour, and was hit by a car. And the car came alongside me. I lost my balance and went down, hit the concrete at about 20 miles an hour, and the car stopped. I was lying there in the road and unable to get up. The fire and rescue people arrived. They took me off started to the Reston Hospital, and somebody said, no, let's take him to Fairfax. They have a trauma unit there. So I realized that I might have a little more serious accident than I realized. And as I lay there for 3 days before the operation, I had tubes in my throat and so forth, and quite uncomfortable.
We probably see I believe it's between 27 and 2,800 patients a year that come through our doors as trauma. And after they leave the hospital, where do you go? There's really no roadmap for what a trauma survivor can do or not do. And the first thing that we do right off the bat is we offer what's called peer visiting. And trauma survivors who are much further along in their recovery and who have gone through that physical and emotional healing, and we train them and they become Nova hospital volunteers. So every week we're going through the hospital offering that service to all of the patients and families that would like it and could benefit from it.
Because I keep getting dizzy. Is that normal?
There wasn't a whole lot known about TBIs. When I first had my head injury, there was none of this peer visitation stuff, so that would have been just fabulous for me. I was on the highway. It was about noon the Friday before Christmas, and there was a small pickup truck stopped in the middle of the highway, LBJ Freeway to be exact, and for some reason I hit it. A couple of guys in the car behind me pulled me out. I had my uniform on. I was a flight attendant for American Airlines, and so they called American Airlines and said, we've found this flight attendant of y'all's, and she was just in a bad accident. She's unconscious. As it turned out, I damaged the optic nerve in my left eye, leaving this eye legally blind. So, I also fractured my skull.
Oftentimes with brain injury, they'll call it like the invisible injury because you look pretty good.
Yeah.
The second piece is we offer support groups. The thing about trauma is it can be a really isolating, lonely time when you don't think anybody really understands what you're going through. So we can't always fix the problem, but to bring people together who get it and can support each other is just tremendously healing in itself.
I was playing first base in a game, and they were going to try to throw a double play, but
The base runner was already past first base, and so I didn't think they would throw it, but the person threw it anyways, and so I wasn't paying attention until the last minute. It tipped off my glove and then hit me right here between the eyes. I really noticed the next day that I was very sensitive to sound, and I didn't realize that was a symptom of a concussion. After that, I went to therapy at Inova Mount Vernon at the Bridge program. It was through one of the speech therapists that she told me about the Trauma Survivors Network. For me, that's when everything changed in my life.
Before we get started with introductions, we have a guest speaker, a special guest who's with us for just a few minutes before she has to head back to the floor. But I want to introduce Dr. Margaret Griffin. She's our Chief of Trauma.
Trauma recovery involves a lot more than just the physical recovery, and so having ongoing care beyond discharge, whether it be physical rehab or emotional or mental or whatever, it has to continue, and this program allows for that complete recovery of the patient.
It's something we're always grateful for.
And it means a lot. I mean, coming back and the EMS folks and the nurses and everybody love hearing people come back and see that they're doing very well, so yeah, it's nice.
A mistake occurred. It's not the end of my life. So now it's been about 3.5 years since then. And I walk with a cool swag. But
That's a good thing.
it is. It definitely is.
I went through a year of very severe depression after my accident, realizing this is the way my life is going to be. Is it perfect? No, I have a disability. But I choose to take the good choice instead of being negative. It happened about 3.5 years ago. I went rock climbing just like any other day. I had done this for 8 months, twice a week. And you're supposed to clip in with an auto belay system, so when you climb all the way up to the top, it lets you down slowly. That morning, I just forgot to connect the belay to my harness. So when I climbed all the way up, I saw the belay all the way up the wall. So I thought I was connected. So when I tapped and I said I was done, I fell straight 38 feet. I remember getting in the ambulance, and I remember them being frustrated because it was a cloudy day that they couldn't fly me out.
The big thing for us is, what are the weather conditions going to be? If we can't get there safely and if we can't transport a patient to the hospital safely, then we shouldn't be flying to begin with. We have 2 helicopters. They're 2 Bell 429 helicopters. One is always available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The first thing that we do when we come in for our shift is we talk with the crew that's about to leave so that we know everything's okay with the aircraft and we're ready to go should a mission come in. Then we actually do our pre-flight of the aircraft, and what that involves is for the paramedics, that is a review of all of the medical equipment, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be, and then the pilot does a pre-flight of the aircraft itself. Okay, we are good back here. Every new shift that comes on every 12 hours goes through that same sequence. We have a special ringtone that indicates someone is calling about a mission. Our standard crew configuration is a crew of 3. So we have a pilot and we have 2 police officer paramedics on board. Once we get into the area, we'll locate the landing zone, and there's usually an engine company already there that's marked off the area.
We really work together as a crew to ensure that the landing zones are safe, and all the personnel we work with on the ground also walk the landing zones for hazards, wires, loose debris. The medics with the fire department will give us a brief synopsis of what happened and what the status of the patient is, and then we start our care right there. And it's very beneficial to explain, hey, this is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to start an IV. A patient is going to feel a lot better about that than you just doing it and they don't realize it and suddenly they feel a pain in their arm. So the communication is really important to talk them through what is going on. And also the reassurance, hey, we're going to take good care of you. Not only this, what you say to them, even that slight touch or physical contact is also reassuring to a patient. When I land, I put the skids down on the ground, and my job is to get the helicopter shut down. Sometimes we will offload the patients with the rotor spinning. Sometimes we will shut the helicopter down.
I remember going through the hallways, you know, the TV show with the lights going. I remember a little bit of that, and I remember a little bit of the ride because I was so tired. I don't remember any of the pain. I don't remember tubes coming in and out of me. I don't remember any of that stuff. It was my wife that had to go through an hour talking to the doctor, the nurse. She's the one that had to go through that and then see me in that state. I had a subdural hematoma in my front left lobe, my brain, which when you see the CAT scan, it's like the size of a small pebble that I've lost some brain cells.
You're the first step in that recovery process. Even though our connection with you may be very brief one, it's very important. What you can do for the victims and the families is remarkable. And so I appreciate that, my family appreciates it. Thank you, appreciate it.
And the third piece to what we offer are called community presentations. Several times a month we go out into the community and present to first responders, nursing students, social work students. We present to the residents here at the hospital, but really it gives the survivors a chance to share their story and then to have just a really easy, engaging exchange between the professionals and the survivors.
I was driving down a street in Baltimore that was a residential street, so it was parallel parked cars, you know, along the side, and at the corner of my eye I see a car come over the hill, and I notice that the tire is over the edge, and next thing I know, I look up to look at the driver, like, what are you doing? And he's passed out. His head is slumped on his shoulder, his eyes are closed, and at this point we are headlight to headlight, and he slams into me completely head on. And I was fortunate that there was a group of 10 runners that were on the same block, saw the whole thing happen, and so they got me out of the vehicle. I sort of got carried / walked with the guy that got me out of the car, and he sat me down on the curb next to his friend. So she handed me the phone to call my parents, and this should have been the first sign, but I didn't at the time realize it. I couldn't figure out how to use the phone. As she was talking to them, someone says, "Excuse me, ma'am, were you the one driving this vehicle?" And I look up, and there's a paramedic standing in front of me. And then I say to him, you know, I just feel really out of it. And he says to me, "Well, that's just shock. You're just in shock." And I said, okay, well, I've never been in a bad car accident before, and I've never been in shock before. If this is what shock feels like, then I guess I'm just in shock. And he said, okay, well, if you think you're doing fine, then we're gonna get out of here. And I said, okay, well, my parents are coming. I wish that the day of my accident, someone had told me what the signs and symptoms were, because just because they don't have a visible injury, wound to the head, doesn't mean that they couldn't have sustained a concussion or a TBI.
This is a picture of the car.
I have this question for you all, actually, for the reason that I wanted to come today. This is my first time doing one of these community presentations. And what is the protocol, or how would a situation like mine usually be approached?
Usually with that, judging by the picture, we would have been transported, period.
After hearing their reactions and how upset they were at the care that I received, or lack of care, that was a weight off my shoulders that I didn't even know was on them. Just to hear that, good, there are quality people out there that are helping in these situations, and that mine was just out of the norm.
Part of the training does incorporate how we should interact with patients, but rarely do we get to talk to a patient afterwards. So it was just a good learning point to have them come in, tell their story from their perspective, and give us feedback on ways that we can improve the things that we do. So we did pull the helicopter in. I know you've seen it once, but maybe it'll be better this time around. You guys are welcome to jump in, have a seat, take pictures.
Typically, if you're on the back of a helicopter, something pretty bad's happened to you, and I understand that, and it's probably a heavy emotional time for that person. And I'm up in the front seat. I don't ever really know what goes on in the back, so it's kind of nice to put a face with the mission every now and then.
It's amazing how quickly you develop a bond for a patient. It's almost immediate. When I walk into an ambulance, it's already there. That's my patient, and I'm going to do the best that I can to care for them. It's almost like they're immediately incorporated into your family, whether they even know you're there or not, whether they may be unconscious and have no idea, or they may be talking to you. It doesn't matter. It's that instant bond.
Like, yes, I lost a lot, but focusing on that doesn't get you anywhere. And this injury happened, there's nothing I can do about it, can't go back in time. So this is what my life is, and I'm incredibly happy. I'd say happier now than I was before my accident, actually.
The doctor told me that I wouldn't run again. I asked him that shortly after the accident. He said, no, but you probably can bike. And I ran a 5K race 8 months after the accident.
The Trauma Survivors Network has helped me to really look back and say, oh, wow, I know what that's like to lie in the bed. And when I tell people my story, they're like, oh my God, that was such a huge traumatic event. Yeah, right now it's a memory.
The past 10 years have not been easy, and they've been a struggle, but during that period of time, I've met a lot of amazing people and seen things and gained a perspective on life that I wouldn't have had before. Getting to where I am now, a point in my life where I am now, is a point I didn't think was possible when I was laying on the ground, unable to move. And when I think back of that medevac trip, and how I hoped that it would go down, I'm glad that it didn't. And when I think about that one paramedic telling me it was going to be okay, he was right, because everything's okay.